Nidal Malik Hasan has spent over a decade on death row, his fate sealed by a horrific act of violence. But to understand how a U.S. Army major became a mass murderer, we must rewind to the beginning, where the seeds of his story were sown. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more gripping crime stories. Leave a comment below. Where are you watching from? What's running through your mind as this case unfolds? Your thoughts matter. Nidal Malik Hasan was born on September 8, 1970, at Virginia Hospital Center in Arlington County, Virginia. His parents, Malik and Hanan Hasan, were Palestinian immigrants from Al-Bayra, a city near Jerusalem in the West Bank. They had come to America years earlier, chasing opportunity and building a new life as naturalized citizens. The family was Muslim, and Nidal, the eldest of three sons, was raised in a household where faith was a cornerstone. But what shaped him most wasn't just religion, it was the push and pull of two worlds, his Palestinian roots and his American reality. In 1985, when Nidal was 15, the family moved to Roanoke, Virginia. His father, a driven man, had already settled there a year earlier to start what would become a string of successful businesses: a market, a restaurant, and an olive bar. The Hassans weren't wealthy, but they were hardworking, carving out a stable life. Nidal's childhood seemed ordinary at first. He attended Wakefield High School in Arlington for his freshman year before the move, then graduated from William Fleming High School in Roanoke in 19. Friends and family described him as quiet, reserved, even gentle. His uncle in Ramallah later recalled how Nidal fainted while observing a childbirth, a hint of his sensitivity that led him to choose psychiatry over surgery. But beneath this calm exterior, was there something brewing? The loss of his parents hit hard. His father died in 1998 at age 51, followed by his mother in 2001 at age 40. He started attending mosques regularly, including one in Silver Spring, Maryland, where he was known to the imam for over a decade. His cousin later said, Nidal's faith grew stronger after these losses, but he didn't recall him voicing radical or anti-American views. Still, the deaths left Nidal unmoored, a man searching for meaning in a life that felt increasingly heavy. Education was a bright spot, at least on paper. After high school, Nidal enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1988, a decision that went against his parents' wishes. While serving, he pursued higher education, earning an associate degree in science from Virginia Western Community College in 1992, followed by a bachelor's degree in biochemistry from Virginia Tech in 1995, graduating with Latin honors. He was disciplined, focused, and driven. But was there a crack in this polished surface? A former neighbor in 1997 claimed Nidal had two sons living with him, attending local schools, a detail that conflicts with official records stating he was unmarried and childless. If true, what pressures did fatherhood add to his already complex life? As Nidal climbed the ranks of the Army, his academic struggles began to show. Enrolled at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland, in 1997, he pursued a medical degree, but faced challenges. It took him 6 years to complete a 4-year curriculum, landing him on academic probation for much of that time. Despite this, he graduated in 2003 and moved on to a psychiatry residency at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Here, early signs of trouble emerged. Colleagues noted his poor performance and odd behavior, like discussing religion inappropriately during training. One classmate recalled a project where Nidal explored whether the global war on terror was a war on Islam, a topic that raised eyebrows. Was this a hint of the conflict growing inside him? Nidal's time at Walter Reed also exposed him to the raw pain of war. As a psychiatrist, he counseled soldiers returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, hearing their stories of trauma and loss. His cousin later said these sessions deeply affected Nidal, leaving him mortified by the horrors of combat. He reportedly faced harassment from peers over his Muslim faith and Middle Eastern background, adding to his stress. What pushed him to the edge? That's a question that lingers as we trace the path to his unthinkable actions. In the months leading up to November 5, 2009, Nidal Malik Hasan, a U.S. Army major and psychiatrist, was a man under mounting pressure. Stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, Hasan faced deployment to Afghanistan, a prospect he dreaded. His colleagues at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, where he had worked until July 2009, had noticed troubling signs. Hasan's radicalization deepened through email exchanges with Anwar al-Awlaki, a Yemen-based imam linked to al-Qaeda. Starting in December 2008, over 10 to 20 emails, Hasan sought religious guidance, but the FBI, aware of these communications, deemed them benign, tied to his research. Meanwhile, Hasan prepared for violence. On July 31, 2009, he visited Guns Galore in Killeen, Texas, asking for the most technologically advanced handgun with high magazine capacity. He purchased an FN-57 semi-automatic pistol, equipped with 2 laser sights, and a Smith & Wesson 57 Magnum revolver, which he never used. Over weeks he bought over 3,000 rounds of ammunition, and practiced at a shooting range, hitting targets up to 100 yards away. Was he planning something sinister, or was this just a hobby? On November 5, 2009, at approximately 1:03, Hasan entered the Soldier Readiness Processing Center at Fort Hood, a place where soldiers received medical checks before deployment. The center was crowded with unarmed personnel, as military policy prohibited carrying personal firearms. Hasan, dressed in his army uniform, sat at a desk, bowed his head for a moment, then stood, shouted "Allahu Akbar," and opened fire with his FN-57. He sprayed bullets in a fan-like motion before targeting individual soldiers. The attack was methodical, relentless. In just 10 minutes he fired 214 rounds, 136 inside the building, and 68 outside. The victims were soldiers and 1 civilian, all caught off guard. Michael Grant Cahill, 62, civilian physician assistant. Major Libardo Eduardo Caraveo, 52, Staff Sergeant Justin Michael DeCrow, 32, Captain John P. Gaffney, 56, Specialist Frederick Green, 29, Specialist Jason Dean Hunt, 22, Sergeant Amy Sue Kruger, 29, Private First Class Aaron Thomas Namulka, 19, Private First Class Michael S. Person, 22, Captain Russell Gilbert Seeger, 51, Private First Class Fromacheksa Velez, 21, pregnant, Lieutenant Colonel Juanita L. Warman, 55, and Private First Class Kam Si Xiong, 23. Francesca Velez's unborn child was also lost, bringing the death toll to 1. Over 30 others were wounded, some critically. The scene was chaos. Blood pooled on the floor, soldiers scrambled for cover, and folding chairs lay scattered. Captain Gaffney charged Hasan but was killed. Civilian Michael Cahill tried to stop him with a chair, only to be shot dead. Private First Class Velez, expecting her first child, cried out, "My baby," before she was gunned down. The emotional toll was shattering. Families lost loved ones, and survivors carried scars, both physical and mental. How could a psychiatrist trained to heal unleash such horror? The crime was discovered instantly, as screams and gunfire erupted at the Soldier Readiness Processing Center. Fort Hood's civilian police responded within minutes. Sergeant Kimberly Munley engaged Hasan outside, exchanging gunfire. She was shot in the thigh, knee, and femur, collapsing as Hasan kicked her pistol away. Sergeant Mark Todd arrived, shouted for Hasan to surrender, and when Hasan fired at him, shot back, hitting Hasan multiple times. Hasan fell, paralyzed from the waist down, and was handcuffed. The attack ended by 1:44 p.m., but the devastation was already done. But was Hasan's choice truly free? His appellate counsel argued that his mental state, shaped by his radical beliefs and desire to be seen as a martyr, clouded his judgment. The ACCA dismissed this, noting no evidence suggested Hasan was coerced or lacked capacity. The court also rejected a related claim that allowing self-representation in a capital case's sentencing phase was improper, finding no legal precedent barring it. Standby counsel's request to independently present mitigation evidence was denied as Hasan explicitly refused to offer mitigating factors, aligning with his goal of accepting responsibility. The ACCA affirmed the findings and sentence, leaving Hasan's fate unchanged. Hasan's appeals raised questions about his mental health, though no formal diagnosis of mental illness or intellectual disability was established. During pretrial proceedings, concerns about his mental responsibility surfaced. Colleagues had noted his overly zealous religious views and odd behavior, like discussing jihad in professional settings, but a 2009 Psychology Today article cited by the defense concluded Hasan was sane, acting rationally within his belief system. Theories of secondary trauma from counseling soldiers or a suicide by cop impulse were considered but lacked supporting medical diagnoses. No court records indicate Hasan was evaluated for intellectual disability, and the U.S. Supreme Court's Atkins, Virginia, 2002 ruling, which bars executing intellectually disabled defendants, was never applied. Hasan's appeals also targeted procedural issues. He argued the military judge erred by not excusing certain panel members, including one with a Major League Infidel bumper sticker, suggesting bias. The ACCA in its 2020 ruling found no evidence the juror was unfair, noting the panel's impartiality was thoroughly vetted. Hasan also claimed the trial should have been moved due to prejudicial pretrial publicity and heightened security at Fort Hood. The court disagreed, stating the military judge's measures like sequestering the panel ensured fairness. Another challenge questioned the staff judge advocate's pretrial advice under Article 34 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ, but the ACCA found no disqualifying bias. Hasan raised 49 issues on appeal, including 11 briefed and 38 unbriefed, plus personal claims under United States v. Rostafon, 1982. The United States Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces (CAF) reviewed the case on March 4, 2024 and affirmed the ACCA's decision, finding no errors warranted relief. The court upheld the conviction and death sentence, citing the overwhelming evidence of Hasan's guilt and the trial's procedural integrity. Supreme Court and ongoing appeals. Hasan sought to extend the time to file a petition for a writ of certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court. On May 23, 2024, Chief Justice John Roberts granted his request, extending the deadline to August 1. As of August 11, 2025, no further Supreme Court rulings have been documented, and Hasan remains on death row at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, awaiting execution. Posts on X reflect ongoing public frustration with the slow appeals process, but no new legal developments have emerged. Will the Supreme Court take up his case, or is this the end of the line? The answer remains uncertain. The final verdict from the CAF on March 4, 2024 affirmed Hasan's convictions for 13 specifications of premeditated murder and 32 specifications of attempted murder under Articles 11, 18, and 80. The death sentence, dismissal, and forfeiture of pay were upheld, with no relief granted for mental health, intellectual disability, or procedural claims. The courts consistently found Hasan's actions deliberate and his trial fair, leaving his fate sealed unless a higher court intervened. After his August 2013 conviction for the Fort Hood shooting, Nidal Malik Hasan was transferred to the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the military's only maximum security prison. Now 54, Hasan has spent over a decade in this fortress-like facility, one of 4 inmates on military death row. But what is life like for a man who killed 13 and wounded 32, waiting for an execution that may never come? Let's step inside his world. Hasan's days are confined to a small, stark cell, roughly 8 by 10 feet, typical of death row at Leavenworth, the disciplinary barracks, a red brick complex surrounded by high walls and razor wire, houses the military's most dangerous offender. As a death row inmate, Hasan is likely kept in solitary confinement for up to 23 hours a day, with 1 hour for exercise in a caged outdoor area. His paralysis caused by police gunfire during the attack adds complexity. Confined to a wheelchair, he requires assistance for basic tasks, though prison officials provide minimal details about his medical care. Does he receive the same level of attention he once gave as a psychiatrist? The irony hangs heavy. Meals are standard prison fare. Think basic, high-calorie food like meatloaf or pasta, served on a tray through a slot in the cell door. Death row inmates have limited personal items, a few books, writing materials, and perhaps a radio, but no internet or personal electronics. Hasan, once a devout Muslim, is allowed to practice his faith, likely with access to a Quran and prayer rug. However, his claim during appeals that the military forcibly shaved his beard, a violation of his religious rights, was dismissed by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces in 2023 for lack of evidence. Did this clash over his beard fuel his sense of grievance, or was it just another failed legal tactic? Contact with the outside world is tightly controlled. Hasan can write letters and receive approved visitors, but death row restrictions limit interactions. His family, including a cousin in Virginia and another in the Palestinian territories, has had little public contact with him since his conviction. Phone calls, if permitted, are monitored and brief. He has access to legal counsel for his ongoing appeals, but his insistence on representing himself during the 2013 trial suggests a man determined to control his narrative. Does he still see himself as a martyr, as he claimed in court? The psychological toll of death row is grueling, even for someone as stoic as Hasan. Isolated, with no clear execution date, he faces an endless wait. The military hasn't executed anyone since 1961, when Army Private John Bennett was hanged. Hasan's case requires presidential approval for execution, and President Joe Biden, who opposes capital punishment, has not signaled a decision. Meanwhile, Hasan's appeals continue, with a petition deadline extended to August 1, 2024, for a potential U.S. Supreme Court review. Will that review ever come, or is he destined to grow old in his cell? Daily life includes strict routines, lights on early, regular cell checks, and limited recreation. Hasan's paralysis likely restricts his movement further, possibly requiring specialized equipment or medical visit. Yet Leavenworth staff maintain tight security, given his high-profile status. Rumors of his behavior are scarce, but his 2013 trial demeanor, calm, unrepentant, and focused on jihadist motives, suggests he remains steadfast in his beliefs. Has isolation softened his resolve, or hardened it? Nidal Hasan's life on death row is a stark contrast to the chaos he unleashed at Fort Hood. As he waits in his cell, the families of his victims still seek closure, while the legal system grinds on. Will justice ever be served, or will Hasan outlive his sentence in the shadow of his crime? What do you think should happen next?